Pause storage is a weird bit of tech, but it can be rather useful in some situations, so I'm going to try and explain how it works. What pause storage is making the game automatically open the pause menu when normally it can't be opened, and this allows for some fun things to happen. For example, after loading a save file, you can't then open the pause menu during the transitional Sly logo fade. But pause storage makes this possible. Before telling you why pause storage works, some game functions are needed to be understood beforehand, so I'll get to those first. Pause menu slowdown. Whilst the pause menu is on screen, the game is frozen, but when you are opening or closing the pause menu, it's not an instant freeze or unfreeze of the game. When opening it, the game goes from running at full speed to running at a decreasing level of speed until the game becomes fully frozen. When closing it, it's the reverse, going from frozen to a slow speed that is ramping up to full speed. This slowdown is what lets you do things like collect a key and exit a level at the same time, and it's also what allows pause storage to function. The HUD priority queue. Certain HUD elements can't exist on the screen at the same time. I'm not sure on the full list, but the ones that are important for this explanation are the Binocchicom HUD, pause menu, and dialog boxes, and even though they have no visual, dialogue that doesn't have dialog boxes associated with it also counts. The way the game avoids having two of these on the screen at the same time is with a priority queue. This technically isn't the true explanation, but it's easier to visualize and understand, and it follows all of the logic behind it. When you trigger any of these HUD elements, they are put at the top of a priority queue, where the element that is at the top of the queue is the one that is active and is the one that is going to be shown. If another one of these elements are then triggered, whilst one is already on the priority queue, then it's put at the top of priority queue, with the others that are already in the queue moving down in priority. For example, if you trigger a dialog box to appear, this dialog box is put at the top of the queue. If you were to pause the game whilst the dialog box is still in the priority queue, then the dialog box will move down in priority, and the pause menu is put at the top, making it the HUD element that is active and is currently shown. When the pause menu is closed, it's removed from the priority queue. Everything beneath it is then moved up one priority, and then the new highest priority element becomes the active one, in this case the dialog box, and it will reappear. The same is true for pausing whilst looking through the Binocchicom. When bringing up the Binocchicom HUD, it's added to the top of the priority queue. Then, when you pause the game, it moves lower on the queue and the pause menu gets put at the top, hiding the Binocchicom HUD as it's no longer the active element. Pause storage is done by using this priority queue system, thus having the pause menu come before the others. Speaking of pause storage, I can now explain how that works, as well as give some examples of its use. When people make a run file for original version runs, they have already used pause storage to be able to skip the cutscene that plays when leaving Paris. They do this by using Binocchicom pause storage. When bringing up the Binocchicom with R1 or L1, if you time a pause just right, the game will start the slowdown from opening the pause menu, but the Binocchicom HUD appearing on screen will be triggered before the pause menu can fully freeze the game. This has the same effect as pausing when having the Binocchicom HUD open, but in reverse, where the pause menu is lower in priority than the Binocchicom HUD. If you would then exit the Binocchicom, the pause menu will open again as it gets moved to be the highest priority. The main use of Binocchicom pause storage comes from the fact that you are able to open a second pause menu whilst the Binocchicom HUD is active, giving this second pause menu a higher priority than both the initial pause and the Binocchicom HUD. This allows you to do something such as load a save file through this second pause menu, which then closes the second pause menu, which then lets the game run during the load game transition, and moves the Binocchicom HUD up to be the highest priority, and therefore the active HUD element. Just a quick side note, in this case, though the Binocchicom HUD is active, it's not actually shown on screen due to the load game transition, but it functions as if it were visible. If you would then close the Binocchicom HUD by pressing R1 or L1 again, this would then remove the Binocchicom HUD from the priority list, and cause the first pause menu we opened to move up in priority and become the highest priority element, and therefore become the active HUD element, which then allows us to select a second save file to load, whilst the load game transition is still happening from the first load. This exact use of Binocchicom pause storage allows us to teleport the second save file that we loaded into the level that we are at in the first save file that we loaded, anytime that we are playing the game. What ends up happening is that we will enter whatever the level that is saved in save slot 1 is, but with the game progression of slot 2. Here, save file 1 is in Descent into Danger with 37%, and save file 2 is in Flaming Temple of Flame with 40%. Save file 1 will be the first file that I load, which means that the level we will be in at the end of this will be Descent into Danger. Save file 2 will be the second file that I load, so the percentage we will end up with at the end of this will be 40%. This would result in having the game be in the level Descent into Danger, with 40% progress, with the active save file being save file 2, as that was the most recently loaded file. The other way to use pause storage is with dialogue triggers, which is a lot more of a niche situation, as we can't trigger dialogue to play at will like we can with both the pause menu and the Binocchicom HUD. Everything that works with a dialogue box also works with dialogue that doesn't have a box, like in World 2's hub, where you can trigger dialogue for a mugshot at the end of the bridge, but no dialogue box actually appears. The difference between the two versions of pause storage is that the Binocchicom HUD is removed by the player, putting the Binocchicom away, whereas dialogue is stopped by the game, either when the dialogue ends or when something interrupts it and forces it to end early, like collecting a key. Another thing that forces it to end early is when you warp to a level using the map screen, even though the game is frozen during map screen warps. With this in mind, if you were to have dialogue pause storage, and then warp elsewhere, the warp would force the dialogue to end, which then removes the dialogue from the priority queue, moving the pause menu up the priority queue, which would then allow the pause menu to open whilst the warp transition is happening. You could use this to load another save file, like we have done before. The main thing that we want to use this for is, when you have a pause menu open during a warp transition, if you then close the pause menu, then outside some unique circumstances, you regain full control of Sly, at full game speed, with the only downside being that you can't see anything because of the map screen covering everything. This doesn't immediately seem useful, as you can't really traverse through a level like this. However, if you're close to a key and can get dialogue pause storage, as is the case in Lair of the Beast, you can collect this key as you warp to a different level. And that's it! Hopefully this video has helped you understand how pause storage works at least a little bit better. It can seem complex and overwhelming at first, but by breaking it down, it becomes a fair bit easier to get your head around. As always, if there are any questions about it, feel free to leave a comment, message me on Discord, or ask in the Sly Cooper Speedrunning Discord. Hope you all have a wonderful day.